Our guest today is the president of the 30,000-member Chicago Teachers Union. She has served as president for just shy of 4 years. Our guest today taught high school chemistry for 22 years. She is a product of the Chicago Public Schools, having attended Kosminski Elementary School and Kenwood High School. There we go, Kenwood. Paul Green is a product of public schools. Our guest today earned early admission to Mount Holyoke College. She later transferred to Dartmouth, where she was the only African-American woman in the class of 1974. Our guest today comes from a family of educators. Her father, her mother, and her husband, who's right there, John Lewis, who's retired, were all CPS teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen Lewis. Karen?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is such an honor to be here and to be asked back again and again. Do I get the same little plaque and mug? And okay.
All depends how you do it. This is a test.
Okay. So on behalf of the members and the staff of the Chicago Teachers Union, I want to thank you for inviting me to the City Club again. And I'm always honored to stand before you. One of my fondest memories growing up in Chicago, when I was about 7 years old, my father would take me out on Saturdays for a ride around the city in his old Plymouth. And I smiled as Lake Michigan whizzed by my window, and I thought its waters flowed from the most striking ocean in the world. And I marveled at the skyscrapers. At that time, the Prudential Building was the tallest building in Chicago. And I imagined them as real monsters of the Midway, ones that came alive at night to play football in the middle of Soldiers Field. I remember one time, however, as we were blazing down 63rd Street with the L's screeching on the tracks overhead, when my father became distracted for just a second and nearly hit a panhandler standing too far in the street. And my father, ever the teacher, grumbled something under his breath about people needing to keep their focus, though I don't think he was judging the man at all. But he then went to talk to me about what it meant to be in poverty versus what it meant to be poor. And I'm not sure it was the man that he was talking about or that incident, but it seemed to me that my father was talking more to himself than to me. Or maybe he was just thinking aloud. But I can still remember what he said. He said, "Never lose your focus, Karen. There's a reason your eyes are in the front of your head. Poverty is an economic condition." Yes, he talked to me like this when I was 7, okay? There was never any little kid talk at my house, but he said that poverty is an economic condition, something created by social and political systems. But being poor is a psychological condition, and it's created by hopelessness and despair. You can have all the money in the world and be a poor and sorry soul. You can have very little and be rich in character, rich in spirit. Never let them break you down, he said. And not saying to whom he was referring, I didn't know who that they was, but he kept looking at me very intently and he said, "Education is the answer. You hear me?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You get an education, you maintain your dignity, and then you fight like hell to never let anyone take it from you. You get an education, and you'll never let anyone take from you what's rightfully yours. Do you hear me? Someone wants to put you in poverty, you better fight like hell, lest you find yourself lost, broken, and poor. You be smart, and you keep your focus." So later that night after dinner, my mother tucked me into bed with promises of sweet dreams, unlike my father, who was scaring me. I really thought about the things that he said to me on the way home. And I think I vowed right then that night that I wouldn't let anyone send me into poverty. That if someone wanted to take something from me or do something to me that I did not ask for, that I should stand up for myself and that I would fight like hell, just like my father said. And I'm reminded of this story because this is where I find myself right now, focused and fighting like hell for the 30,000 educators who elected Jesse, Christine, Michael, and me to our office. Our members don't want to wind up in poverty because someone who just rode into town wants to take away their livelihoods. It's as if the 1% isn't satisfied with having most of it, they want it all. And they justify their behavior by determining amongst themselves who is worthy and who isn't. And they do stuff like determine which children receive another brand new, unsolicited, selected enrollment high school in their neighborhood, and which children have 49 schools in the communities wiped off the face of the map. They develop social identifiers to determine who amongst us are the strivers, and who amongst us are in the 25% who will never amount to anything or never be anything, and therefore aren't worthy of investment. And then they question your values without ever becoming truthful about their own. These influencers managed by chaos and carnage. These are among the city's fathers who are calling for our pensions and the destruction of our unions. And instead of engaging in a public good and being real heroes by dramatically funding neighborhood schools, helping to ease student debt, and ensuring teachers and other public employees have the resources they need to give our young people a 21st century world-class education, our leaders see opportunities in crisis, and so they manufacture a great deal of them. That would be crisis as a management tool. Isn't that what we hear whenever our elected officials want to reduce, cut, or diminish something? It's a crisis. This is their go-to management tool. CPS said it had $1 billion deficit. I've heard that over and over and over again. And we all say, yeah, it's really bad. With $1 billion deficit, the board somehow found a way to authorize 13 new charter operations, to fund 3 new turnarounds with costs that could trend upwards to $21 million, to spend $10 million for new furniture, to announce new air conditioning for every school, to unveil surprise plans for a $60 million Barack Obama high school on the north side in honor of a South Side trailblazer. I do think the Board of Education only allows you to name schools after deceased people, and the list goes on. But CPS and the mayor forgot to tell people that their $1 billion deficit included $300 million pension payment that was slated for 2014, and they forgot to mention their surplus, because guess what? They have those too. But then again, the board and City Hall forget to tell us a lot of things, like how charter schools fare no better than neighborhood schools. In many cases, they fare worse. How these operations are in Springfield using taxpayer money and private donations to fight legislation that would hold them accountable and put them under the complete authority of that same Board of Education as the rest of us. So how is it in 2014 that we have a major school district in this country with separate and unequal policies? The time is coming where charters cannot dodge accountability, and when their educational employees will have to unionize in order to secure their benefits and to protect the integrity of their classrooms. And CTU will be right here, red shirts in hand, waiting for them when they do. I know he's over there. Leadership. The city does not have a pension crisis. It has a leadership crisis. Although CNN's mockumentary called Chicagoland, how many saw that? One? How many? Come on, y'all fess up. How many saw that mockumentary, Chicagoland? Tell the truth. Okay, that's what the ratings look like. Not very good. They would have the entire world believe that this is a town with one heroic school principal, and where one lone ranger named Rom and his trusty sidekick McCarthy run around solving everybody's problems by executing tough choices with cool one-liners and good lighting. CNN wants us to believe that this is a magical land on some utopian island where race, class, history, democracy, and context does not matter to the people who call this place home, and the mayor's only valid opposition is a 9-year-old boy on the South Side. Chicago is a city of diverse neighborhoods with rich histories and unique subcultures. So what you saw were stereotypes and social and political challenges out of context. It wasn't just that the African Americans on CNN nonsense that were stereotyped. So was Chicago's middle class. The blacks' only issue is youth violence in internally directed despair, and the white in this town only care about their season's tickets and parking meters. So as you were watching, did you hear the dog whistle go off? So I'm reading a book by Ian Haney Lopez called Dog Whistle Politics: How Coded Racial Appeals Have Reinvented Racism and Wrecked the Middle Class. And I know some of you cringe when I bring up race, but I'm not going to stop talking about it until it's no longer relevant. Dog whistle. We don't need Hollywood producers to carve out a fictitious narrative about our city while touting the benefits of a colonial mentality to make this work exciting. They say there are a million stories in the naked city. Well, let's talk about the tale of broken promises. Promises were made to the public employees of this city, and those promises have been broken. And when we say it's about the money, but when we ask, why are you trying to cheat us? Instead of answers, we get faulty logic and false choices. Drastic pension cuts or no pensions at all. More funding for the classroom or pension benefits for failing teachers. Fully funded pensions or 150% increase in the property taxes. False choices. The wrong questions. What we should be asking is, why does a law like 4.5 exist on the books that makes it difficult for Chicago parents and educators to negotiate over class size? Why is Chicago the only school district without a representative elected school board? You're supposed to applaud there. Why are public services and public sector employees under this constant attack by our leaders? It's about the money. It's so folks like Ken Griffin and Bruce Rauner, who make more per second and per minute than many workers in Illinois earn in a year, can constantly meddle in education policy while they continue to not pay their fair share. It's so someone like billionaire John Arnold, who ran Enron into the ground and stole the pensions of thousands of workers in one of the largest pension heists in this nation's history, can inflict the same kind of damage upon Chicago. These are the same folks who are rabid about teacher accountability. Look, if all these hedge fund managers and venture capitalists were really concerned about shared sacrifices, they'd create some jobs and institute a living wage for Illinois families instead of destroying our city like a swarm of Gucci-winged locusts. Why can't they pay their fair share? We don't have a pension crisis. We have a pension shortfall and a crisis in leadership. We have someone on the fifth floor who lacks the political will to do what is just, what is honorable, what is legal. We have someone who governs via press release, controlled PR campaigns, and we have elected officials in Springfield who seek to punish people who did everything right, who did nothing wrong by paying into their retirement system. We have a governor who is caught between a rock and a hard place. But even if that is so, he must have the moral courage to do what is right and equitable for working families in Illinois. Instead of citing this shortfall as a reason to end expensive tax cuts and subsidies, CPS, the mayor, and other lawmakers are citing it as a reason to slash retiree benefits. CPS proposed major cuts to retirees' pensions during the spring 2013 legislative session. CTU opposed any cuts to retirees, not just the incredibly draconian cuts Mayor Emanuel supports. These proposed cuts mainly affect retirees through suppression of cost of living adjustments. Under the CPS proposal, COLAs would be limited to 3% simple interest on the first $25,000 in retirement income, up to a maximum annual increase of $750. Over time, a retiree would lose thousands of dollars in pension benefits. And I'm sitting here looking at some of my mother's best friends right there and one of my former teachers who this would affect. So I want to debunk this pension myth. Our officials and their allies want the public to believe that public sector workers are greedy and undeserving of the defined benefit. Unlike most workers, teachers do not receive Social Security. We are not eligible for the free Medicare Part A, and our premiums average $451 a month. And that doesn't include doctor's fees and prescription medicine. So we're talking $41,584 a year for a teacher who is fully vested after 28 years of service, and much less for paraprofessionals. It should be noted that under Mayor Emanuel, it doesn't look like many of us will even make it to 28 years. Is that the scheme? Fire us before we become fully vested? Nearly 3,000 educators have lost their teaching positions under his reign alone, many of whom are African American, female, and over the age of 50. So let's face the facts. No retired school clerk is getting rich off of $26,000 a year. No one is living high on the hog. We don't have 9 homes to choose from like Bruce Rauner with his $18 watch. This is about nearly 30,000 school employees who are being asked to agree to do more with less. This is about my 85-year-old mother whose only income is her pension. And I don't want her choosing between her prescriptions and whether or not she'll buy food. This is about Carmen Betts, a dedicated 4th grade teacher who will be laid off this year because her school was recently turned over to AUSL. She's too young to retire, and if she can't find a new teaching position, what happens then? You want her to lose her job, take a cut to her retirement security, and then turn around and pay more in property taxes. Does that make sense to anyone besides the mayor? The 401k pension scheme. And they act as if our pensions are crippling the system. Less than 15% of private sector employees in the United States now have defined benefit pension programs, down from nearly 40% in 1979. However, cash value plans, the 401ks, have grown from 16% to over 42%. The CTU is not interested in casino-style capitalism where the very people who trashed our economy in 2005 are now entrusted with our lives. We do not want to move into a 401k-style plan. This would prove to be disastrous, and the board would still have to continue making its contribution as guaranteed by law. How we got here. Illinois taxpayers have benefited from the diversion of billions of dollars of pension money to cover other public expenditures for 17 years. Chicago taxpayers contribute about 18% of the state's tax revenues, but the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund receives only a tiny portion of the state's funding for teacher pensions. It is CTU's position that new taxes dedicated to reimbursing the CTPF would not be contributions to a so-called broken system. We believe if the rich would just pay their share, we could actually fix the pension system injured by the diversion of retirement money used to bail out politicians for their poor fiscal planning through the years. We believe new taxes should be directed towards those sectors of the economy that are the most robust and provide the strongest growth opportunities. So here are our revenue proposals. We have to get more creative about revenue generation. How they make this overdue payment not our responsibility. Yet, we want to show the board, our parents in this city, that we are always willing to work with them and find equitable solutions. We have been very vocal about wanting CPS to renegotiate bad loans with banks and calling for TIF reform. We should delay the expiration of the TIFs and use a small section of that revenue that it would create to produce a series of bonds. We support what Cook County Clerk said recently on this subject, and I quote, "Chicago homeowners are being asked to pay more for pensions without receiving any additional services, while corporations and private interests in TIF districts continue to reap their reward." He said he believes that there's a way to restructure TIF funds to ease the pension burden at no additional cost to taxpayers. We should go back and look at his recommendations. We believe that there should be a commuter tax on individuals who live outside the city but work here and rely on city services. This is something we know the mayor supports, and guess what? This is an opportunity for us to actually work together on something. It could happen. Okay, maybe not. But it could. This proposal is a flat 1% tax on the incomes of those who live outside Chicago but work in the cities. Suburban residents benefit from the urban core's global influence, as well as the income opportunities provided by employers based in the city. The city valued this tax at $300 million based on the 620,000 non-residents who work in Chicago and earn an estimated $30 billion in income. We have been saying all along the rich must pay their fair share, and we support a fair and progressive income tax. We have a research department at Chicago Teachers Union, and one of our researchers, Sarah Haynes, points out that having everyone in Illinois pay 5% in income tax is absurd. The estimated median income by census tract in Chicago range from $5,000 on the near west side to $280 on the near north side, with a city average of $48,000. Illinois could haul in $57 million from just a minor increase in the income tax of 6 people. I'll say that again. 6 people who are among the most influential in maintaining the status quo in education funding and policy. I'm not gonna name their names because one of them is actually sitting here, and I'm gonna be good today. You know how hard that is for me. Illinois has lost an estimated $2.5 billion in tax revenue due to the abuse of tax havens. We want corporate loopholes closed. According to Pew, public pensions face a 30-year shortfall of $1.38 trillion, or $46 billion on an annual basis. This is dwarfed by the $80 billion a year states and cities spend on corporate subsidies, welfare. But chief among our proposals is our call for a LaSalle Street tax, also known as a financial transaction tax, or FTT. This would generate between $10 and $12 billion annually for Illinois, with about $2 billion going to the city of Chicago. This very small tax seeks $1 on both the buyer and the seller of futures contracts, and a $2 tax on derivative contracts that are executed through the facilities of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the Chicago Board Options Exchange, 2 of the largest financial markets in the world. Each year, the value of products traded on these 2 exchanges totals well over $500 trillion. The average contract size is more than $225,000. So under our proposal, the tax is less than 0.001% of the contract's value. You and I pay more taxes on our takeout orders at McDonald's than buyers and sellers would pay in this proposal. And it should be further noted that the payment of the LaSalle Street tax does not fall on the trading venue, but rather on the entities, institutional, and individuals who trade. The products under this tax are not traded on any other exchanges. Some of them, such as S&P 500 index futures and options, are exclusively licensed to these 2 exchanges. Therefore, there would be no incentive for the exchanges to just pick up and move, as some have suggested. Although the exchanges do not pay the LaSalle Street tax, they do provide a low-cost and technically simple means to collect the tax. So who pays? Most derivative trading is done by large institutions and individuals such as investment banks, day traders, hedge funds, and brokers as well. Accounts held by high net worth individuals. The bulk of the revenue would come from the top 1% and the institutions that handle their money. Can this work? Yes, it can. There are similar taxes in the UK, Switzerland, Hong Kong, France, and other countries. These are all large markets, and the tax has been in place for several years, or in some places even decades. The markets in these countries have not been hurt, and the exchanges have not moved away. In administering the LaSalle Street tax, the clearinghouses already serve as a collection agency for transaction fees, and they could easily collect a financial transaction tax at low cost. I know a financial transaction tax isn't popular with our board president and the mayor, both of whom have direct ties to the Merc. I know they're very concerned about their super wealthy friends and colleagues having to pay a whopping 0.01% on the underlying notional value of their trades. I get it. The wealthy do not want to pay their fair share. I get it. Instead of the uber rich giving up a single dollar on $250,000, their defenders would have our senior citizens lose thousands of dollars in benefit cuts. But I believe Illinois could use $10 to $12 billion annually. Imagine the possibilities of having this new pool of revenue. Imagine the impact on the lives of people in our state who are dependent on social services, mental health services, job training, education, affordable housing, and retirement security. Currently, there are 2 FTT proposals that have been submitted to the Illinois legislature. House Bill 1554, calling for the $1 and $2 taxes, respectively, and a revised House Bill 5929 that would instead impose a much lower financial transaction tax, say 50 to 75 cents, that would also raise significant amounts of money from high volume trading. The LaSalle Street tax is good tax policy for Illinois. The rate is very low compared to the value of the contract. The tax would fall primarily on high-income individuals and wealthy institutions. It would discourage useless short-term trading, and it taxes a sector that caused the financial crisis that led to the Great Recession in the first place. In conclusion, we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the We Are One Illinois and the We Are One Chicago in fighting this broad daylight pension heist. The Chicago Teachers Union is proud to work with AFSCME, SEIU Healthcare, and the fire, nurse, and police unions. In total, we represent the real backbone of Chicago. We are the first responders, the people who take care of the sick, the impoverished, the illiterate, the people who keep the city functioning. Our internal challenge is to maintain our focus, to support one another, and to resist the urge to appeal to narrowed interests. Our elected lawmakers must have the political will to generate revenue that isn't derived from cutting, reducing, and punishing those who have already paid their fair share. If the mayor can honor a contract for parking meters, he can also honor the constitutional provision of retirement security. And if he cannot, then maybe it's time we send him into early retirement. I know, that was really, I couldn't resist. I know, right? The Chicago Teachers Union will continue to expose the predatory corporate and political interests that eschew an elected representative school board, because the hand-picked school board of the mayor refuses to honor the wishes of parents that want smaller class sizes, wraparound services, libraries, art, music, PE, appropriate staffing levels, and an end to high-stakes testing, and a stable education workforce. The schools our children deserve. Thank you. Thank you.
All done?
Thank you, Paul.
Well, I'm sure there aren't too many questions. If you have a question, City Club P, get around. Raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, we have a couple. Long questions, Madam President. Let's start off with Bruce Thomas, who's not a member of the City Club, but because we're open, we take all questions. The other one isn't a member either. Okay. Do you think Chicago could do something like the pilot schools in Boston, which were created by an agreement among the union, the mayor, and the school system? 25 words or less, Karen.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm not sure. I just recently heard about this pilot program, so it's hard for me to really speak to the specifics of it. But I am always very interested in working with CPS. I mean, there are people here that we work with on a regular basis. We figure it out. I have a very, very good working relationship with Barbara Byrd Bennett. I don't have a relationship with the mayor. I don't know why people need to think like they need to force that. And that's because he doesn't want one with me. I mean, I'm the easiest person in the world to get along with. I really am. I don't know why people say that. And he has my number. Call me, Ron. You got my number?
Okay, well,
That was 25 words or less.
yeah, that last part was really good. Father Ryan, the fifth floor the Safe Passage program for kids going to the new schools, is it working?
Well, it depends on what that means. Have there been no attacks on the actual routes? Then I would say yes, but that's a pretty low bar. The real problem is that what happens in the schools afterwards. There have been a lot of problems with putting together the two different school communities. It was something that we hoped we could avoid by proper planning, which we were never really allowed to do because they waited until the last minute to surprise us with what schools they would be, as always, because, you know, God forbid that we don't control the press around here. So, you know, for the fact that nobody's been injured or hurt, and again, an extremely low bar, I would say yes, that's a good thing.
Okay. Get ready. John Frigo, independent citizen.
Oh, that's always scary.
In the city of Chicago, that's a very small group. We'll just ask the first one because that'll get you going. What have you done to dismiss poor teachers more quickly instead of 2 to 3 year process to allow better teachers to be hired or promoted?
Okay, so first of all, that's a lie, and I'm here to say it's a lie. You know, first of all, it's not my job to dismiss teachers. That's the job of principals, and I think principals do their jobs. So I don't know why the union always gets blamed for this. However, and again, when you ask what have you done, I don't even deal with that side of the union. But I'm going to say this: our chief labor lawyer has worked for years with Teamsters and SEIU and other, you know, labor guys. That's the kind of lawyer he is. And then he came to work with us, and he was stunned by the fact that he said, I thought it was hard to dismiss a teacher. It's very easy. He kept seeing these dismissal cases all the time. So, Mr. Independent Citizen, your information is wrong in the first place, but you know, certain people never get out of that because they've been hearing that for years. It has been a lie that's been promulgated over and over and over again. When you hear it, and you hear it again and again, it starts to be the truth. So, for example, the last time I was here, I got accused of saying something that I never said, but it's all over the internet with my face, one of the ugly pictures, by the way. And this meme saying that I said something I never said, and I get all this hate mail, and people invade my Twitter timeline, and you know, and I have to be civilized and polite, but it doesn't matter that it's not true. Once a lie gets started, you know, there you go.
Okay.
So what's this say?
Well, that independent citizen, well, forget the other one. He's only allowed one. Any guy that calls himself an independent citizen No chance for 2 questions at the City Club. I mean, you gotta watch out. There could be, you know. All right, Bob Grover, retired. Retired from what, Bob? Law practice. Okay. He's retired. That's all it says. What do you...
It's a good thing.
What do you... Bob, you gotta... Bottom line, what has been the impact of the women's movement on the teaching profession? Oh, talk about a softball for Karen Lewis.
Wow. So since I was here for the women's movement, it's not history for me, unlike a lot of my colleagues. Well, you know, teaching, especially in elementary school, has been a predominantly women's movement. 87% of K through 12 teachers nationally are women. I also think that's why it's easy to attack us and to immediately talk about how we're terrible. And we've also been very compliant. Every time some new thing comes down the pike that they say will make us better, we have done it over and over and over again. This is the first time we're starting to see real resistance from rank and file, everyday classroom teachers who know that some of the things that are coming down the pike, like the Common Core state standards, the tests that go along with that, they are revolting against doing things that they see that's harming children. So in one case, I think the women's movement, which gave women opportunities to do a variety of things, has actually empowered teachers, which was always a traditionally kind of women's profession. So what I think is interesting that comes out of it is that we're tired of being complacent, we're tired of being demoralized, and we're very tired of people making these kind of genuine, abstract discussions about what we do and how we do it. But we also are the first that will stand and put ourselves in front of our children. We will protect them. That is our natural way of doing what we do. So we've seen this happen over and over again. The tragedy at Sandy Hook, the tragedy of the tornadoes in Oklahoma, where teachers were on the front lines of protecting children, not only with their work, but with their bodies. And I think that will always happen.
Okay. We have 2 questions. One, we don't, anonymous questions. That's even below an independent citizen. You can't sign your name. But we end from Miles Mendoza with a City of Chicago, City Club kind of question. Okay, where's Miles Mendoza? Wait a minute, this was my end. Frank, we'll give you 2 more. Frank Paul, right over there, City Club board member. Brother. Will Governor Quinn benefit from education insight of his lieutenant governor candidate, which leads me to this question Mr. Mendoza asked. He's from Ed Choice, Illinois. You're going to like this.
Yeah, all right. I already know who he is.
All right,
so
but you're going to like this question. Lieutenant Governor candidate Paul Vallis, I do believe he's in Illinois.
Don't ask Judy.
Has supported expansion of charters and vouchers in Chicago, Louisiana, Philadelphia.
Haiti.
While
Bridgeport.
Here comes the punch. While powerless as lieutenant governor, he is only a heartbeat away from control. How does this affect your support of Pat Quinn? Now that's the kind of questions we like at the City Club.
False Choice, Illinois. Okay, once again. All right, so I'm gonna take it as a 1 and 2. Frank asked, will Governor Quinn benefit from education insights of his lieutenant governor? God, I hope not. But here's the thing that's interesting. Paul Vallis, and I have in my possession a letter that he wrote to retirees in 1997, guaranteeing them that the law that changed in 1995, the dedicated levy of the pension tax, there was a dedicated levy that went straight to the pension fund. And CPS took that and put it into the operating fund, and Mr. Franzik could even tell you more about it because I think he wrote that law. Sitting over there. That one.
He's around the clock, he won't answer.
I know, that's true. But he wrote this wonderful letter that says that under no shape, way, fashion, whatever, will your pensions be touched because they are inviolable by state law. So I'm so glad he has that in writing, and I'll be glad when I meet him. Somebody here said they were going to introduce me to him. I forgot who that was. That I'll have that with me so I can say that. The heartbeat away part is scary. I'm going to be working very hard with Pat's doctors. Thank you very much.
Great job.